I'm like you. I do a normal 9 to 5. I work here and there, work a regular job, a couple dollars, a couple hundred. So it doesn't leave me time to talk about things that I want to talk about in particular terms to what I normally talk about on my channel, which is wrestling. Sometimes it's review videos, prediction videos, reaction videos, news videos, whatever. Where my face and my words are just here for you to listen to, almost like a podcast in a way. But I would be doing myself an injustice if I did not talk about this particular situation that took place last Sunday at All Out. So, overall, let's just say this. Wrestling last weekend, absolutely amazing. From Clash at the Castle to Worlds Collide to All Out, 2 of the 3 shows, absolute bangers. Now, I haven't watched All Out yet, and I will when I get the chance. But I can say this, from watching Clash at the Castle, from watching Worlds Collide, absolutely 2 of the best wrestling shows of the year, perhaps 2 of the best wrestling shows of the last decade. The crowds were insanely hot. The fever pitch was unreal. It was an unreal fever pitch within each setting, from Cardiff, Wales to the Performance Center in Orlando. Absolutely amazing. But those are not the real talking points out of the entirety of the weekend. The biggest talking point out of the weekend was CM Punk, the Young Bucks, and Kenny Omega, along with Ace Steel, getting into a massive backstage fight after CM Punk, on his media scrum, went absolutely balls in on everyone in AEW. Now, CM Punk has a pretty interesting track record, to say the least. In my opinion, CM Punk is an absolute amazing wrestler. He's an absolute amazing character. As a person, though, he's a bit of a dick. He's a real piece of shit. And some of the things that he's done and some of the things that he's said over the years has been nothing short of just plain, complete and utter loads of shit to a lot of different people. His trashing of WWE, his trashing of Colt Cabana, trashing on a lot of people, especially recently. But everything reached a fever point at the media scrum. So, spoiler alert, at All Out, if you haven't watched the pay-per-view, I haven't really watched the whole entire pay-per-view, but I know the results. At All Out, CM Punk defeated Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship. Now I'm going to make a separate... Actually, no, I'm going to add this. I'm going to really just add this all together. I'm going to say this right now. Jon Moxley losing to CM Punk absolutely buries him. Buries his momentum. It buries his championship reign. It buries his interim title reign, which should have never happened to begin with. It buries the squash match that he had with CM Punk for 2 minutes and 59 seconds. It buried everything as an 11-day transitional champion. It buried him completely. John was on an absolute roll. He was doing things unheard of. He was putting on great matches with great people. He was winning. He was doing everything. He won the tournament to be the interim world champion, which shouldn't exist, especially with the women's title. There shouldn't be an interim champion, period. There should just be a champion. One champion. It shouldn't be 2 champions. It should be 1 champion. It shouldn't be somebody that's a placeholder for the person to come back and then they lose. It doesn't make any sense. It's just no. I just hate it. I hate that kind of concept. So, a champion should relinquish the title so that way somebody new can win the belt, and then the person that held on to the title, they get the rematch when they come back. It makes sense. It's logical thinking within the world of wrestling. But no, AEW like to do it differently. Tony Khan likes to do it differently. See how that worked. So the entirety of Jon Moxley's run for the last maybe 3 to 5 months, done, buried, completely wasted him. But earlier in the night, there was a casino ladder match. The Joker won the ladder match, who revealed to be Malcolm Bivens for a moment. Revealed to be Malcolm Bivens handing off a chip to the person that was in a mask, who would later to be revealed as MJF, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, returning after almost what? Since June? I think since June. Returning since June. It's been away for July, August. It's been away for 3 months. Huge return. But that's not the biggest talking point out of it. It's what happened at the media scrum. Because as soon as Punk goes backstage, he's up there at the podium with Tony Khan. And the whole thing, when we thought was going to be a conversation about, a talk about him winning the title, him having his big moment in Chicago, turns into an absolute just barrage of just words, hurtful, disgusting, unrelenting words about Colt Cabana, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and the entirety of the AEW roster. He basically pretty much used his media scrum to just deplete AEW, period. It's no point in me kind of like talking about what he said. I'll leave a link in the description to the media scrum, because that's the perfect way to really like digest everything. But he just buries the entirety of the roster. He buries the entirety of Colt Cabana's existence within the company, because I actually want to point blame to the person that asked about Colt Cabana to CM Punk, instead of, I don't know, asking him about the championship win, asking him about the match, asking him about like anything other than something personal. That's something that people haven't really talked about, putting blame towards somebody that asked that question to him. Nobody's really looked into that, but I am. But Punk should have never even had a single word spoken about that, period. He should have never even opened his mouth about it. He just said, next question, should have moved on. But instead, goes on a tirade, blasting Colt Cabana for, man, it's just really hard. It's just really hard, because like, I watched it, I've listened to it, I don't want to repeat it. I don't even want to say it because I don't even really know the entirety of the words. But just look at the video. You'll really just see it yourself. Like, you'll hear what he said. It's ridiculous. And then blasting Omega, then blasting the Young Bucks, blasting the EVPs for not doing their job, posting rumors on the media to get people to click. And then once he gets asked about a question of wrestling MJF, he says he's tired of wrestling these kids, tired of basically giving effort to guys that really don't deserve to be in the ring with him. He just basically trashes AEW. And the one problem I have with this, The one big, huge problem I have is Tony Khan, the president, the owner of All Elite Wrestling, on that podium, is there with him. He says not a single word. He doesn't stop him. He doesn't stop Punk. He doesn't tell him to cool it down. No. He just sits there. He says nothing. Nothing. He doesn't speak. He just lets this man talk. And talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And trash. And trash and trash. For minutes. They let him talk. He lets that man trash them for minutes. And I don't want to slap and choke the life out of Tony Khan. Because how the hell do you not have any kind of control over your company? How do you not have any kind of control over your world champion? It makes no sense how he has no control over a company that he runs, that he's the owner, that he's the president of. But he goes on to his media scrum. He goes on to talk about he's had enough of this. He's had enough of taking back seats. He's not tired of this. He's tired of this shit. And he's got more money than WCW than anybody. I'm like, who gives a fuck, dude? I don't care how much money you have. Run your company. Be a president. Be an owner. Be in charge. Don't let your people lose control. Because they start losing control, you lose control. Once you lose control, there's no control. And right now, you have zero control. Zero. No control whatsoever of your entire company. And it's a piss load of shame. It's a piss load of shame that this company, All Elite Wrestling, who went from the most magical place in the world to the biggest dumpster fire in professional wrestling history. It is WCW levels toxic. And that is bad. That is legit bad. As WCW in 2000, we hear the stories. We've heard numerous stories about WCW and how the booking was back then. It was an atrocious place to be. And my God, you hear the news about people getting into backstage fights, people not working together, or not being able to work together. You hear about Sammy Guevara and Eddie Kingston getting into a fight, and we literally see it in the ring, the unprofessionalism. Hell, there was a clip I saw. Sammy has Ruby with like his hands on her legs, and Ty kicks Ruby in the head, and Sammy just throws her, and Ruby lands completely on her neck. An ugly scene, to say the least. An absolute ugly scene. It was horrible. It's deplorable. Like, oh, that was so terrible. But let me get back to the main point. So after Punk's media scrum, he goes to his locker room. Apparently, this is CM Punk's side of the story. He goes to his locker room, and Matt and Nick and Kenny go to the locker room that Punk's in. They bang on the door after knocking on it. Punk doesn't answer. And apparently, the door is kicked down, and Matt and Punk go at it first. Matt and Punk, I should say, go hand in hand. They go for a fist. A punch was missed by, I believe, Matt, and Punk hits Punk hits him, and then there's a chair thrown by Nick, which leads to Ace getting involved. Kenny then gets involved and gets pulled by his hair and bit by Ace Steel. Nick is in the altercation too, and it's a mess. It turns into an absolute mess. And from what the story is from Punk's side, it was Ace trying to protect his wife, who was in that locker room. And it's just unbelievable. It is unbelievable how the entirety of this just, oh my God. It's really hard to really talk. It's really hard to oh my God. It's ugly. It's super ugly. But everyone said this on multiple articles, multiple outlets. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful, David Meltzer of Wrestling Observer, Brian Last, all said the altercation was led about what Punk said about the company, and that there was a huge fight, and that it got nasty real quick. Now, the reports are that multiple people have been suspended. That included the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Michael Nakazawa, Christopher Daniels, Pat Buck, apparently. And there's one more name. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, and I was watching the Wrestle Talk Reactive News, and I saw the name as well. But just to be clear, the Elite, Michael Nakazawa, the Elite for sure have been suspended. And here it is. I'm actually going to pull it up right now. All right, so Omega, Matt and Nick, Pat Buck, Christopher Daniels, Michael Nakazawa, and Brandon Cutler, 6 names have been suspended for their part in the altercation. Christopher Daniels, really? Pat Buck and Christopher Daniels, those are weird names that have been suspended. I can understand probably Omega, Matt, and Nick, but I need to know the roles of Pat, Christopher, Michael, and Brandon. Those are roles I have to figure out. And there's another one that's reportedly saying that multiple sources have shared that Punk and Ace Steel will either be among those suspended or no longer will be in the company by the end of Wednesday. So, in my honest opinion, if I am the Young Bucks, I am Kenny Omega, who are, let's not forget, Trios World Tag Team Champions, by the way. They're the Trios Tag Champions who are not going to be on the show tonight because of the fight. Your Trios Champions are not on the show tonight. Your World Champion is not on the show tonight because of this. If you're the Young Bucks, if you're Kenny, and Punk is not going out of the company, and Khan decides to choose Punk over his locker room, you say bye. You go. You leave. You join Cody. You leave that toxic waste of AEW and you go somewhere else. Because in my honest opinion, Punk should be gone. Ace should be gone. I'm not talking about suspensions. I'm talking about gone from the company. Gone from wrestling. Because Punk is a legit cancer to professional wrestling. And there's been so many people that have been trying to say, oh, this is all a work Nothing is really going on. Everything's just going to play off on TV. And to that I say, you are an absolute idiot. Because if this is... It's not a work, by the way. Dave Meltzer and Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful and Wrestling Observer respectively has said it's not a work. It's all a shoot. And if this was a work, this is how you really get attention? This is how you get people to pay attention to your product? By showing that it is uncontrollable, that it is out of... There's nobody that is able to calm down anybody in the locker room, that there's no leader, that you have to start a freaking blood war within the locker room to get people to pay attention. You're psychotic in that way. So this leads me to this take. AEW has no control, and AEW needs new management. Tony Khan needs to exit out of his role as the president. He needs to get a new management team into the company that can pretty much structuralize the locker room, can structuralize creative, that can structuralize and make AEW a much better, comfortable place for people to work in. Because recently, it has been absolutely toxic as hell. Purely toxic. I've never read news over the last few months that have had such a broad negative light on AEW. Wrestlers unhappy, people not getting on TV. 134 contracted superstar or contracted wrestlers on your roster, and you only use about not even at least 80%, not even 70%. You use only about at least 60 to as low as 52% of those people on your TV screen. That is atrocious. Your women's division is by far the worst thing in that company. You have tons of talented female stars. You only use about 4, 6. And you have so many ex-WWE guys that you signed over, and they barely get a feature on TV. Malachi Black just got released of his AEW contract just today. And he had one of the biggest debuts last year. He was supposed to be a world champion contender. He had one of the most unreal groups in AEW. A failed project that should have been something bigger in the House of Black. That was supposed to be trios champions. That was supposed to at least have Buddy and Brody as tag champions. Malachi Black maybe as the TNT champion or the AEW world champion. Nope. Not even close to a title. Not even close to a single title in the company. It sucks. AEW right now sucks. There is no control. Tony Khan has lost all credibility as a cohesive owner, as a cohesive president. He needs to restructure his roster. He needs to get control of his people, because if he doesn't, at some point, that company is going to get buried to the ground. And a lot of people aren't going to stay for that. Do you think AEW has lost control? Do you think that AEW is going to recover from this? What is your reaction about the entirety of the backstage situation? Let me know in the comments. Give me a like. Give me a subscribe. I post whenever I can, honestly. And mostly, some of my videos are honestly like this, where I just basically have an open conversation about whatever is on my mind. Until then, peace, love, have a wonderful week, have a wonderful September. To all the kids going back to school, please take advantage of your education, learn as much as you possibly can. To everyone going back to work, please work as hard as possible, make as much money as you possibly can. To everybody, safe. Safety is the number one thing in this world. Love is the number one thing that we can give and that we can earn. And positivity is the number one thing that we best have. If you're not focused on this at the top of your head, you're not focusing on this. Till then, take care.